There is no single simple key to this peace, no grand or magic formula to be adopted by one or two powers. Genuine peace must be the product of many nations, the sum of many acts. It must be dynamic, not static, changing to meet the challenge of each new generation. For peace is a process, a way of solving problems. With such a peace, there will still be quarrels and conflicting interests, as there are within families and nations. World peace, like community peace, does not require that each man love his neighbor. It requires only that they live together in mutual tolerance, submitting their disputes to a just and peaceful settlement.
I need somebody who can shape an axe handle from a persimmon sprout, shoe a horse with a hunk of car tire, who can make harness out of hay, wire, feed sacks, and shoe scraps, who planting time and harvest season will finish his 40-hour week by Tuesday noon, and then pain in from tractor back put in another 72 hours. So God made a farmer.
I stand before you as a friend and ally to every American seeking justice and peace. And I stand before you in firm opposition to anyone exploiting this tragedy to loot, rob, attack, and menace. Healing, not hatred, justice, not chaos, are the mission at hand.
Coming to you live, it's Reba Live on Red State Radio. Today we have John Crump with us, and he wrote an article recently, and I'll just let him talk a little bit about who he is, what he does, and where his thoughts are on what's happening in our country today.
Hey, I'm John Crump. I am the Virginia State Director for Gun Owners of America, the No Compromise gun lobby. I am also a writer for MLN News. MLN News, which can be found at MLN.com, is the world's largest two-way gun website. We do news from everything from industry news to Second Amendment news. We also have an investigative journalism department that does stuff like FOIA requests of ATF and stuff like that to try to get inside information on the ATF and law enforcement, anything dealing with gun rates, really. I recently wrote an article about what I am seeing as a disturbing trend and what is going on in the country. The title of the article was, has the first shots in the new American Civil War been fired? And after watching what happened in Kenosha and what happened out in Portland, where Jay from Patriot Prayer was killed by an Antifa member for being a Trump supporter, as long as stuff like Chaz up in Seattle and basically everything around the country, it seems to me that we are getting closer and closer to a tipping point where we cannot come back from. And I'm afraid that the first shots have already been fired. We've already seen our Fort Sumner, and people are going to have to make a decision of what side of the fight they're going to fall on, whether it's going to be on the Antifa side where they want to tear down our country, or if they want to side with the patriots of the country that want to be free and want to be left alone by an overbearing government.
You know,
and
back
right
on...
now, I don't...
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say
right now, I don't see that there is a way other than we are already in a civil war. It looks like it was a cold civil war, but it looks like it's heating up now.
Yes, this all kind of began back on May the 26th, and we're now in the month of September. So we've had, a couple days after the George Floyd incident, which happened on that final Tuesday in May, the riots began in Manhattan on that Thursday night, 2 days later. And of course, we remember what happened to Minneapolis, and then the riots also began in front of the White House at Lafayette Park. I was actually there, boots on the ground, John, and I had gotten word from when I woke up on the previous Saturday morning that I needed to be in New York on that Friday, arriving no later than that Thursday. And little did I know what was actually going to be taking place that week. And so I was there when all of these riots and looting and arson began there in New York. It was a small taste of what was happening in Minneapolis. Now, have you been in any of these major cities where these outbreaks of violence have taken place, like Seattle, Portland, or Minneapolis?
Well, I live right outside D.C., so I've been to the D.C. rallies, which seem to be a little bit more subdued, mostly because of federal police presence. Plus, the D.C. police don't really play around with protesters. If you break the law in D.C. by rioting and whatnot, they will charge you with a felony, and they will throw the book at you. D.C. doesn't really have a catch and release policy like we see in like Portland and Seattle. So I think that's why D.C. has been a little bit more under control. I've also been down to Richmond, Virginia, which is about an hour and a half down the way, and that is a totally different situation there. They do have a catch and release policy there, and it seems like the protests get out of hand a lot easier, and there's a lot more damage, and people seem to riot a lot easier. And I really have to think that it has to do with the catch and release policies.
Well, that certainly doesn't help matters, that's for sure. There was a fella back in June who was very concerned about the statues there in Virginia that were being destroyed, and there's like a whole section of the city there where there's all these statues, and he was wanting to get a bunch of patriots together to protect these statues. And of course, we know in Lafayette Park they attacked statues there. They burned the church that's across the street, and all this was at the 1st of June. I was actually there when all of this was going on. It was quite chaotic, I must say, and there was a kind of a mob type of atmosphere. And I was on the front lines there with the police and the military, and the Black Lives Matter and the Antifa surrounded me. I had forgotten and had a Trump pen on the back of my wheelchair, and one of the people that was rioting noticed that pen, and they like encircled me and became quite hostile. And one of the gals that was with me quickly removed the pen, but it was too late. And it was kind of a frightening time for those who were with me, but they didn't intimidate me at all. These people are really cowards. And that's what patriots need to realize. They're nothing but bullies and cowards, and they'll go running home to mama in a second if you just stand up to them.
Well, that is true. In fact, during Lobby Day back in January, there was a big gun rally in Virginia. I was put on the Seven Hills Antifa's hit list for known fascists and fascist supporters. I'm neither a fascist, and I don't support fascism, but they put me on their list anyway. So I went and I actively sought them out to ask them why I was on the list. Well, when I confronted them, they didn't want to talk to me. It probably had something to do with me and the 4 people I was with were heavily armed, but all of a sudden they didn't want to talk anymore. They didn't have the numbers, and they couldn't sucker punch you or, take a cheap shot against you. So they are cowards. They will retreat. They've been threatening me for years, and I just keep on telling them that bring it on. If they want to deal with me, come deal with me.
Now, you've written this article. Kind of tell us a little bit about your background. Like, what do you do in your day job?
I'm a journalist with MLN News. Like I said, we're the largest website in the country for guns. We're the only gun website in the top 1,000 websites in the world. So that's what I do. I write for them. I am also the Virginia State Director for Gun Owners of America, so I fight for gun rights a lot. Most of my journalism isn't really opinion-based. It's fact-based. It's not really an op-ed, so to speak. The article that you read is one of my op-ed pieces, which is kind of rare, but I just felt I needed to say something about. I've been reporting about everything going on that just drove me to actually write an op-ed about what I've been seeing going on around the country, and that's what I do, and that's how you found me, I guess.
Yes, the Second Amendment Coalition in Florida, here in Palm Beach County, they ran your article, and that's how I came upon it. You have some type of ties to the NRA, is that correct?
GOA, Gun Owners of America.
Okay, so no.
The NRA is like the big organization. Gun Owners of America. We are kind of like the NRA. We're the second largest gun rights organization in the world. We are a little bit more no compromise than the NRA. Like, we believe in no background checks whatsoever. We want to get rid of the NFA, the National Firearms Act, and we're against waiting periods. We're against red flag laws. We're against basically all of gun regulations.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question is, what do you think about these red flag laws? Because personally, here in the state of Florida, we have these red flag laws, and we don't like those. Can you kind of explain to people what exactly is a red flag law and why we should be against these in light of our Second Amendment?
Absolutely. Red flag laws is the colloquial term for an extreme risk protection order. An extreme risk protection order is what I like to call a gun confiscation order. Basically, what happens is a friend, a family member, depending on what state, a neighbor even, can go to the courts and say this person is a danger and they shouldn't be allowed to have guns. Well, what happens then is the judge looks over the information with the police and decides whether, they can take your guns away. Well, here's the thing. There's no due process. The person doesn't have a chance to present evidence or actually defend themselves in court. The evidence I'm talking about is I can go there and say, my wife, she said that, she wants to hurt someone. Well, there's no evidence and she probably didn't do it, but I want her to not have guns because I'm a domestic abuser or something like that. So they're gonna take away her guns. And it's a really scary thing because there's no due process built in. There's no protection. Not only is it a violation of the Second Amendment, but it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment, of the Fifth Amendment. And here's the thing. On average, it takes $10,000 to get your guns back once they get taken. In fact, there's a guy named John Carpenter who lives in the Tampa area who was red flagged. And here's the thing. The reason why he was red flagged was the cops had a report of a John Carpenter making threats. So they looked up John Carpenter in Tampa who have a concealed carry permit, and his name popped up. So they red flagged him, took his guns and everything else. And it was the wrong John Carpenter. The guy looks nothing like the other John Carpenter. In fact, the person who took out the red flag warrant was like, "That's not the right guy. You got the wrong guy." And the cop's response originally was, "Well, he can tell that to the judge when he sees him in 90 days," which is crazy, right?
Yeah.
Luckily, the press got him, and then they reversed course, mostly because it was getting a lot of negative press. So we had to get the word out on that. But if the word didn't get out on that, he would be disarmed without any due process. And his family could be in danger if a home invader happens and he's disarmed.
Absolutely.
He could be in danger. In fact, the name John Carpenter is very common.
It is. And I have a name that I would think would be not that common. My name is Reba Cheryl, okay? And when I started running for Congress this past year, lo and behold, there is a congresswoman from the state of New Jersey, and her name is spelled the exact same as mine. Her name is Rebecca Cheryl, spelled the exact same way. And I would think my name is not that common. And when I actually put it into a Google search, all these people popped up with my same exact name. So mistaken identity is not uncommon. And this is something that is quite disturbing. I know that these arbitrary accusations like you just described in these red flag law situations, it also happens in abusive guardianship situations where people want to steal someone's estate. So this kind of overreach by the judicial system and by law enforcement is something that patriots need to be aware of, and we need to stand up against it, and we need to support one another when these kinds of things happen to someone unjustly.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And these red flag laws are spreading around the country, and we're going to have a fight on our hands nationally soon. It's already here, but it's going to get even more intense because there's people on both sides of the aisles that support red flag laws on a national level, which is scary.
And I think there's really a lot of misinformation about this red flag law. I remember back at the first of this year, I spent some time volunteering at our state fair in, or maybe it's county fair here in West Palm Beach. And the Second Amendment Coalition had a table there, and we were talking to people about this red flag law. And just the other day, actually, I think it was over the weekend, I read something that the president was speaking favorably about these red flag laws, and I'm not sure if he really fully understands how they're being put into play. So perhaps we need to raise his awareness about the injustices that can take place, because I know he very much stands for our Second Amendment. He is really intending to preserve that and not to violate it. So perhaps this is a situation like the one you described that he just hasn't had that brought to his attention as yet.
Yeah, we are actually working with the White House to educate them on red flag laws. So they know. So they will know. Okay,
good. Is this a recent endeavor that y'all have engaged in?
For the past few months, our legislative head, Aiden Johnson's been working with White House officials on what a red flag law is, why it's not exactly good, and they've been really receptive.
Okay, that's good to hear. We need to follow up and make sure the president gets the information, because I know sometimes information is sent to the White House and it gets blocked before it is brought to his attention. So we need to make sure that that it makes it all the way to his desk.
It gets blocked or manipulated, or quotes are taken out of context as well. That happens a lot too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with the mainstream media, of course, we know how they propagandize the people all the time. But then there can be unintentional miscommunication, like that game we played as kids, telephone. You say something to one person, they repeat it, and they repeat it. And oftentimes there's a mistake with the very first person who repeats what was said. Maybe they didn't hear the full information, or perhaps they even did pass it along, but the next person misunderstood. So you can mishear something, or you can misunderstand something.
Or what happened recently at Facebook is that there's like a trusted fact checker that manipulates the data or manipulates what is said to mark something as false that's not false. If I can go off on a tangent for a second.
Sure.
Camilla Harris, during the Heller case back in 2010, submitted an amicus brief to the Supreme Court saying that that the right to bear arms is not an individual right. It only applies to the military. Well, what happened was there was a couple articles out there, one by Cam Edwards and one by Rachel Malone, that talked about that and how Camilla Harris doesn't support individual firearm ownership. The French Foreign Press marked that as false and saying that she did. So what I did was I posted her amicus brief, no explanation, no nothing, on my journalism page. They marked that as false and redirected to their own fact check thing that says this is false, this is why it's false. So I started writing a story about foreign election interference, because that's what Facebook said they're trying to get rid of, right? Mm-hmm. So I started writing an article about foreign election interference, and I contacted Facebook for a quote. They didn't give me a quote, but they banned me for life from the platform.
Wow.
Yeah, it was eventually corrected, and it's no longer marked false, but they banned me from the platform. And if that happens to me, it's happening to other people. So when people are talking about red flag laws and other stuff like that, these big social media platforms have the ability to mark it as false, even if it's not. Then if you try to get the word out that they're marking it as false when it's not, they'll just kick you off. And that's another reason why a lot of the information is getting lost or jumbled and whatnot, because the Silicon Valley powerhouses are, have the ability to block information they don't want anyone else to see, kind of like the mainstream media.
Right. Yeah, I know I've been shadow banned, and pretty much everyone I know has been shadow banned at some point, and it makes it difficult. So we really need alternative methods to communicate with one another. And that's one thing I really love about this radio show is people can call in and they can talk to one another, and they don't have some big tech company like Google, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram that's blocking their voice. They can actually call in and they can speak and be heard by other patriots. So it's really an excellent avenue, and we need to find more avenues where we can communicate, organize, and strategize with other patriots, because we're in a very critical time in history right now, and we need to formulate a plan so that we can come out the other side of all this turmoil, the victors, because we need to seize back our freedoms and liberties. They've been chiseling away at them for many decades, and we need to right this ship, bring things back the way they were intended, so that we are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Absolutely. We don't need a second revolution. What we do need is a restoration of our republic.
That's right. We need revival, a restoration, and a form of revolution. I have a friend that that coined a new term, Revolution, after my name Reba, and I thought it was quite clever. But we do need to start out on a new trajectory here and get off this well-worn path where people just follow along like sheep to the slaughter.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is really hard to do. I'm not saying that it's impossible, and I think we can do it. It's just going to take a lot of work, not by just people like you or me, but everyday citizens out there to talk and engage with other people. Not debate them, but have conversations with them, because once you have a conversation with a lot of people, you find out that, they want the same things that you do, and maybe they just haven't heard your perspective. But if you listen to their perspective, you can give your perspective to them, and maybe you can bring them over to your side that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Most people today, well, I don't know, COVID has kind of given a little break for a lot of people. Many people haven't been able to work, but that also brings its other stressors and distractions. But a lot of people have started researching that weren't researching before. But typically speaking, people in our country are so busy working to earn a living, to put food on the table and pay their utility bills and put a roof over their heads, that they don't take the time to do the research and be as well informed as they could be.
Yeah, that is definitely true. I think researching and being informed is something that's very important. In fact, I think it's a civic duty of everyone to be informed of the issues. Doesn't mean we're going to agree on everything, but if you come from a position of ignorance, maybe we don't agree because you don't have all the facts that you should have. Maybe if I don't have all the facts, maybe you can give me the facts. Maybe you can change my views by actually presenting the facts in our argument. What we get into now is people just blindly follow what the mainstream media tells them, or what some politician in their ivory tower tells them, instead of actually looking at the information of what's going on. I mean, the media coined mostly peaceful protest, and I was reading an article today that talked about how there was violence during a peaceful protest. Well, if there's violence during a peaceful protest, that's not really peaceful. A peaceful protest.
Exactly.
But yet, the headline talked about a peaceful protest.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the media and the deep state, they have done a real job on manipulating our vocabulary, twisting words to mean things that they didn't mean before. So they reframe things in such a way. It's very deceptive. And of course, as we all have seen, they throw out these words, these phrases like racism and bigot and, xenophobe. HRC was really, really good at that. She did that all the time, and so did the previous administration. So I think it's really important that, like you said, we deal in facts and evidence. So when someone starts throwing out these accusations, they need to have a rationale for throwing out that accusation. And I will hold someone's feet to the fire and insist that they tell me one example. And 99% of the time, when someone is in a heated discussion with me, and I challenge them to give me an example, they can't. Like, they're completely silent. It's like the deer caught in the headlights. Because these people, they have no idea why they're saying these things. It's just something that's been drilled into their head. And basically, they've been brainwashed.
Well, I call it word jujitsu. That's just a term that I came up with it. for everything. Like I was talking about the mostly peaceful protest, there's other types of war jujitsu out there as well. For example, assault weapons. What a lot of people don't know is the term assault weapons was coined by the Brady campaign, or the Brady organization as it's known now. And the reason why they coined the term assault weapon is because it sounds like assault rifle. And they wanted to confuse people. And their leaked emails even states that's the reason why they came up with the term assault weapon, is to confuse people. And to be able to say an assault rifle is a fully automatic rifle, we need to ban assault weapons. Well, you thought they were using assault weapons and assault rifles interchangeably, but they're not. It's just they're telling you something, that the definition of a term, and then using a term that sounds very similar to that term to try to push their agenda. And that happens in not only guns, but that happens in every walk of life, everything in life. People try to use terms like that to confuse people.
Yeah, I remember when I was a young girl, people would say, I'm happy and gay, and it meant they were joyful. And then, of course, they recoined it and to mean homosexual, and now it means lame. So they're all the time manipulating our language. So when you look back in history with the language, it's hard to know exactly what people meant. So we're going to take just a moment's break here and give you a chance to get a drink of water or something, and we'll be right back in just a moment. Welcome back to Reba Live. I have with me John Crump here, and he's talking to us about red flag laws and gun rights, and the fact that we may actually be in a civil war and not even realize it as yet. Welcome back, John.
Thank you.
So let's continue on and talk about some of the other issues you raised in your article. One of the things I know that you mentioned was Boogaloo Boys. What is that?
Yeah, the Boogaloo Boys. The Boogaloo Boys it's a term. Basically, it started out as a meme on Facebook where there's a movie. Yeah, we have to go back a little bit. Back in the 80s, there was a movie called Breaking to Electric Boogaloo. Well, some people, and I know the originator of the term, he doesn't want to be mentioned, but he saw the movie and he's like, maybe we need a revolution too, Electric Boogaloo. Because, the original movie was called Breaking to Electric Boogaloo. So the term Boogaloo started out as a joke online. And then it started getting banned. So people started changing the term to Big Igloo, which is, it sounds like Boogaloo, but Big Igloo. And then it got even changed farther to the Big Luau, which people would go to gun rights rallies and everything with Hawaiian shirts on and everything else because they're getting ready for the revolution too. They weren't talking about a shooting revolution, but they were talking about a revolution to get our rights back. Well, the mainstream media took note of this and all of a sudden started calling people who consider themselves so-called Boogaloo Boys as a threat. And the ATF actually sent out a memo saying, if you see someone wearing a Hawaiian shirt, they could be heavily armed, so be careful. Which I thought was kind of ridiculous, because how about if you just like Hawaiian shirts? And, I don't wear Hawaiian shirts, but I'm usually armed. So they started demonizing these Boogaloo Boys, and then they started blaming the Black Lives Matter riots and the Antifa riots on Boogaloo Boys, saying that they were undercover, they were dressed up as Black Lives Matter to start riots, to frame Black Lives Matter and Antifa. It's really ridiculous. The mayor of Richmond actually came out and said that, and to their credit, Black Lives Matter 757 came out and said, "What are you talking about? It wasn't the Boogaloo Boys who rioted. It was Antifa that rioted." And the mayor was basically said, "Well, Black Lives Matter don't have all the information. We know it was the Boogaloo Boys who were pretending to be Black Lives Matter and Antifa," which is ridiculous. And out in Portland, when the member of Patriot Prayer got shot,
Yes.
the Portland mayor didn't blame Antifa. They said, well, Patriot Prayer was in our city causing trouble. Well, the guy was walking down the street with a Trump hat on. He wasn't at a rally or anything. He just happened to be a member of Patriot Prayer. So the Portland mayor blamed him for being in Portland instead of actually blaming the people who actually did the murder, which I think is despicable.
Yeah, like patriots, we do conduct peaceful protests, but they're always pointing the finger at us and saying we're causing the trouble, but yet we're not assaulting anyone, we're not breaking into any stores, we're not starting fires. And this makes me think about Kyle, up in Minnesota, was it? Wisconsin, sorry. Kyle, they were trying to start a dumpster fire. And so he intervened. He's trying to protect property. And it got out of hand in a hurry. He was being attacked and he defends himself.
Well, I wrote a lot about that whole situation. They already started the dumpster fire when Kyle put it out. They were trying to push it into a line of police. So he put it out, which enraged the crowd because he dared put out the fire before they could roll it into a police barricade. And if you watch the video, before Kyle fires his first shot, there was another shot fired. You could clearly hear another shot fired. I don't know if that was fired at Kyle or if it was fired somewhere else. That hasn't been determined, but what has been determined is he didn't fire the first shot. There was other shots fired. In fact, if you watch the whole video, after he stopped shooting the second time, there was more shots fired. And they try to say that he went there to kill people. He didn't go there to kill people.
No.
If you watch, after the third guy got shot, there was a fourth guy that was running at him. He stopped, put his hands up, and Kyle could have shot that guy, but he didn't. He showed discipline and didn't pull the trigger because that guy was backing off. So that guy was no longer a threat, and he didn't take a shot at him because he was no longer a threat. So they're trying to pull this poor kid over the flames and over the fire because of this. They also said that he brought a AR-15 across state lines, which is a total lie. He didn't cross state lines with that AR. The AR was owned by someone in Wisconsin, and they also said he went there to start trouble. He was working a job as a lifeguard earlier on that day. Then he cleaned up graffiti after when he was asked if he would stay, and he agreed to stay. And now they're trying to destroy him.
Yeah, and I tell you, when I saw this young man and what he did, I could not have been more proud of him. He spent a lot of time honing his skill, and obviously was very well trained. I don't know who to thank for that, but not too many people of any age can handle themselves like he did. And he's 17. Like this kid, he's so brave, so courageous, And he did not hesitate to defend himself and those around him against these thugs that were meaning to do harm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the way I look at it. They were there to do harm. And you got to remember, the second guy that was shot was armed and pulled a gun. He was pulling a gun on Kyle when Kyle shot him in the arm. And the first guy was a child molester. The second guy was a felon who owned a gun. And here's the thing. The guy that was a felon with a gun hasn't been charged with, an unlawful person owning a gun. Because if you're a felon, you can't own a gun, much less hold a gun. And he had a gun. Mm-hmm. So where's his charges? Exactly.
So there's just so much hypocrisy that's going on across the country. And these leftist politicians are making it possible for anarchy to reign supreme in so many of these cities and states. We the people, I know I've talked to patriots in some of these blue states, like in California and in New York, and many of them are waking up. Even some of the Democrat politicians are waking up, and they are supporting President Trump. I think that this is going to continue to snowball, but I do have a concern about the election. There are powers that be that are manipulating things in so many of these elections. And I really do hope that the president has everything well in hand and he is protecting the November 3rd vote.
I hope so too. They're talking about mail-in ballots and everything else and extended voting and all this other stuff because people might not be able to vote on election day. Elections are incredibly important. So if you don't want to take the time out of your day to go down to a poll and vote, I don't really think I want you to vote because you're not really taking it that seriously. If that's too big of a time crunch for you, or if that's too big of some type of inconvenience, then I don't really want you to vote because you probably aren't really up to speed on all the issues.
That's right. And of course, we have a major election every 2 years. So one day out of 2 years shouldn't be too much to ask that you set the time apart. I know there's a lot of people that don't tend to vote in primaries, but these are equally important because if we don't get the candidates through, if we have not properly vetted candidates and vote for those who are actually well qualified in a primary, then we won't have good choices come the general election. And I've seen that happen time and time again all across our country.
Yeah, so have I. I think a lot of people are of this philosophy that I can't run for anything. I'm not a politician. Well, I think the problem is that there's too many politicians running for things. I think we need more of the common people. George Washington wanted there to be no politicians. He wanted people to go serve a few years in Congress or whatever, and then go back to private life. And now there's people that come out of college, AOC, for example, and their whole entire career is, I'm a politician, which I think is very scary.
Yeah, well, we know that she did spend a little bit of a stint as a bartender, but I don't know how good a one of that she was. But I agree, we need people from all walks of life. We need Congress to look like a town. Like we need a mail carrier, a farmer, a mechanic, a barber, a stay-at-home mom. We need people of all walks of life. We need to diversify Congress like that. Most of the people serving in Congress, and I use that term serving lightly in their case, they're attorneys. And we have way too many attorneys, and I'm sure most people in the audience would agree that most attorneys are crooked. It's hard to find a good one. I have met a couple, but it's very rare. And we need more of everyday people, a baker, a seamstress, entrepreneurs. The president was a businessman, is a businessman, and look at all the good he has done. And he could do so much more if we just get the right people to give him the support and the backup he needs in Congress and the Senate. And just because someone has a D or an R by their name doesn't make them qualified. We need to look at individuals and vet each person and see if they can stand on their own 2 feet and actually serve the people and represent them and their needs in Congress.
Absolutely. Yeah, what I want, I don't want a leader in Congress. I want a representative. I want someone who represents the people. A lot of people in Congress have this idea that I'm the supreme leader. I make the decisions. It doesn't matter what the best for the people at home or what the people at home want. I'm here to represent my own interest and not the interest of the public, which I think is scary.
Yeah, it's disgusting. Truly, it's disgusting. People's egos get in the way. And in politics, It's become a popularity contest, and we need to bring it back to American values, America first. We need to put America first. I'm so sick and tired of seeing all this stuff that has made in China on the label.
Yeah, why isn't America first something that's bad? Every other country puts their country first. Why can't we do the same? We have to put America first. It's not just for me. I have 2 kids, and when I say America first, I'm not talking about America first for me. What I am actually saying is my kids first. My kids are Americans. They should benefit from this country before anyone else, because this is their country. They are Americans. They're not going to benefit from Canada first, or or anywhere really, China. They're not going to benefit from these countries. What they're going to benefit from is the United States. And by saying, hey, we can't play favorites with our own country is just absolutely ridiculous and asinine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not playing favorites. It's just if you're not solid and strong in your own person, in your own country, how can you do anything to help anyone else? This is a biblical principle. We have to safeguard our own household first, and then reach out to those in our neighboring community, and then we can go beyond that. But we have to take care of our own. It's like when you're on an airplane, and the mask drops because you lose pressure and you don't have oxygen to breathe. The parent has to put the mask on themselves first. You can't help someone else until you help yourself. And then when you are stable, and I think this is what the president has actually been doing over the last 4 years, is really trying to get the United States of America on a good, solid footing, so then he can move forward and actually attack in earnest these other issues and clean out and drain this deep state swamp.
Yeah, I agree. One of the other things that the left seems to do is try to demonize hard work. They say that I'm greedy for wanting to keep the money that I make, and I don't. I give a lot to charity, and they want to say I'm greedy because I want to pick the charities I give to. My answer to that is, who's the greedy one? The person that wants to keep what they make and choose where they donate the money to, or the person who just wants to take my money for their own needs and wants?
Yeah, where's the motivation for that person to do anything positive in their life? And we actually all need to be working together to make a difference. You know, throughout my life, even as a young child, when I saw something that needed to be done, I didn't ask who's going to do that. No, you just jump in there and you just take care of business. Like, too much time and energy is wasted pointing fingers at people. And we just need to get involved ourselves personally and make a difference.
Yeah, we definitely do. We definitely have to get in there and make a difference. That's why I do a lot of charity work. And I do a lot of volunteer work, because that's how I'm going to make a difference. But I shouldn't be told that I'm going to have to give money to this person, or I'm going to have to give money to that person. That's not what should happen. And I think that's what they want to happen.
Yeah, we'll be back in about 5 minutes, and we'll be taking your calls.
Town in Tennessee, a long way from the suits in D.C., but close enough now to see this mess. Where I stand, the mound's getting steeper, and grab a shovel, dig the hole a little deeper, just to bury my kids right up to their necks.
There is no single simple key to this peace, no grand or magic formula to be adopted by one or two powers. Genuine peace must be the product of many nations, the sum of many acts. It must be dynamic, not static, changing to meet the challenge of each new generation. For peace is a process, a way of solving problems. With such a peace, there will still be quarrels and conflicting interests, as there are within families and nations. World peace, like community peace, does not require that each man love his neighbor. It requires only that they live together in mutual tolerance, submitting their disputes to a just and peaceful settlement.
I need somebody who can shape an axe handle from a persimmon sprout, shoe a horse with a hunk of car tire, who can make harness out of hay, wire, feed sacks, and shoe scraps, who planting time and harvest season will finish his 40-hour week by Tuesday noon, and then pain in from tractor back put in another 72 hours. So God made a farmer.
I stand before you as a friend and ally to every American seeking justice and peace. And I stand before you in firm opposition to anyone exploiting this tragedy to loot, rob, attack, and menace. Healing, not hatred, justice, not chaos, are the mission at hand.
Welcome back to Reba Live. We're here with John Crump, and we've been talking about these exact things, about the looting and rioting and the chaos. And we need to bring healing and stability and revival, restoration back to our country. Welcome back, John.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to open it up for other callers. If you want to call in and ask any questions of John or myself, we'd be happy to address those issues. So, John, let's continue to speak about the things that you've brought out in your article. Now, have you heard anything about anyone starting a GoFundMe for Kyle? like they do for all these other people that are causing all this ruckus, such as George Floyd and the individual who was shot and paralyzed. I found it interesting that his mother actually apologized for what was happening with that. Do you have any updates on that situation? Is there any fundraisers or support that you are aware of that's been going on?
Yes, I am. They did start a GoFundMe for Kyle Rittenhouse, but GoFundMe deleted it. They won't let anyone fundraise on Kyle's behalf on GoFundMe. They don't want Kyle to use their platform.
Wow.
And there was other legal defense funds that were shut down as well. I know that his lawyer has set up a GoFundMe through his website. I'm trying to remember what that GoFundMe is.
That would be Lynn Wood?
But yeah, he set up one, not a GoFundMe, but a fundraiser for Kyle, because GoFundMe wouldn't let anyone donate. And what I'm also hearing is Discover Card won't let you donate via Discover Card to his new website that they're fundraising for. They're basically trying to shut down any legal defense that he can have, which I find it kind of ironic, because Blake, the guy that kicked off all the Kenosha protests,
yes,
he was being arrested on a warrant for raping a 14-year-old, and yet his fundraiser is still up on GoFundMe.
Yeah, they've raised quite a sum of money for him, which is, it's really odd that people are donating for someone who's actually a criminal, and then someone that's an upstanding citizen, they are left to fend for themselves, and they're not getting all the love and support from their fellow Americans. But I have a feeling that most of those monies that are being donated to people such as this criminal, it's coming from people like George Soros and other liberals just trying to push their agenda.
Yeah, the Tide Foundation, stuff like that, I would imagine a bunch are coming from.
Yeah, I did an experiment. Someone had shed some light on this the other day. If you put in for Antifa, you get redirected to Joe Biden's site. And I know for Black Lives Matter, it goes to fund all these Democrat politicians such as Nancy Pelosi. It's crazy why people don't recognize that this is going on. And yet, when you raise these topics up with many of the people in the general population, they think you're a conspiracy theorist, but it's all based in facts. Anyone can go check it out.
Yeah, I will say the Antifa one is kind of a hoax. It does redirect to Joe Biden, but I was doing a lot of research on that, and I was able to track down the group who doesn't want to be known. But I will say that they 100% are not. They're trolls, basically. They're not Antifa or even Democrats.
So do you think it's like a mirrored website, and perhaps it's just a form of propaganda?
Well, no, it's the people who registered the Antifa website, who actually they own the domain already. They're not Antifa, and they're troublemakers, basically. I was actually spoke to the people who own it, and I'm convinced that they're troublemakers, and they admitted as much.
Well, we're certainly not in short supply of troublemakers these days, that's for sure.
No, they're trying to start trouble. But talk about the Black Lives Matter giving Biden and Democrats money, and that is absolutely true. It's basically a clearinghouse. You give money to Black Lives Matter or any of these groups, and it automatically gets pumped into the Democrat machine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is really an all-out war. A silent war has been going on for a long time, but as your article was pointing out, perhaps the civil war of guns being fired has already begun. We have had quite a few people that have been killed since all these things began back on the end of May of this year.
Well, the thing is, now these groups are pushing into other areas, like the suburbs and the rural areas. They're no longer content with staying in the city. They're pushing into places like Fredericksburg, Virginia, and places like that, where they're going to get a lot of pushback, and they're not going to be allowed to do what they've been doing for a long time.
Well, I know here in South Florida, we have a lot of patriots that are chomping at the bit to have some of these groups like Black Lives Matter and Antifa come to their suburb. We're ready for them here.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are. So I don't think that they're going to get the result that they think they're going to get. They can push around a lot of people where there's no one armed. But when you start to try to push around people who have the ability to fight back, then that's usually not going to end good for you.
Right. And I think we need to get more of our citizens awake and aware of what's really going on, because they've been so caught up with this COVID thing. And I know when I look around in my county, in Palm Beach County, our leadership here has really tried to instill fear in a big way. You know, we've had these mandatory masks now for many weeks, and they actually put us under curfew back in the second week of March, or it may have even been the first week of March. And I kind of made a video poking fun at that, you know, that they have these curfews here in South Florida. Because, yeah, the virus can tell time. So you better make sure you're in your house by 9 p.m. and don't leave it before 6 a.m. because that virus, it tells time, and it's going to attack you if you're out at 11 p.m. at night.
Yeah, I thought it was funny when they put out the statement that, you know, attending a Black Lives Matter protest isn't going to increase your risk of getting the virus, but attending an anti-lockdown protest will increase your risk.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, of course, they've also attacked our churches and our synagogues, trying to prevent us from meeting together for our spiritual nourishment. And this has been going on from the very beginning. But yet they let them riot in D.C. and in Manhattan, and they didn't have social distancing. They weren't wearing masks. I know, I was there. And they did nothing. And Fauci, I saw an interview with him the other day, and he was being hammered. Jim Jordan was really hammering away at him, trying to get him to admit to the truth about it. You know, he refused to say that being involved in a protest would put you at higher risk, and so we should ban those things. But yet going to church or playing these sports, those we need to be afraid of. So I have no tolerance for these politicians who are trying to instill fear in our citizens. And what the word fear means... I'm sorry, go ahead.
You can go ahead. Finish your thought. Sorry about that.
So the word fear to me, it means face everything and rise. Like, they're not going to intimidate me. I can't be bought. They're not going to sideline me. I know what's up. And they are their agenda is very clear to most all patriots across the nation. And the gig is up.
Yeah. I posted something to my YouTube page. You can find my YouTube page at John Crump 2 on YouTube. It was a speech not a speech, it was an interview of Yuri Bebminski. Oh, sorry, not Bebminski. Sorry, Bebminzov. He was a KGB agent that defected over, and he talked about how that they were planning on infiltrating and defeating the United States. And he said it's going to take probably about 3 generations of students. And he breaks it down the 4 stages that they were going to go through to infiltrate and defeat the United States. And even though that the USSR is dead, if you look at what he said, we are in stage 4 of a 4-stage plan. And I break it down where, stage 1 is indoctrination of students, and we've seen that. He said that's going to take the longest time. He said stage 2 is going to be like trying to collapse the economy, collapse the military, and make us look bad on foreign affairs. And what's the best way to collapse the economy is just shut it down for months at a time. What's the best way to affect foreign affairs is to try to say the president is illegitimate. And then stage 3 was where there's a crisis. It's 2020, so you can pick any number of things for a crisis, whether it's COVID or the riots and everything else. And 2004 is what he called normalization, and that's when the left-wing politicians take over.
Wow.
And it's scary.
Yeah, did you see?
I encourage anyone to watch. Eye-opening.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to check that out later this afternoon. So did you see where the Seattle police finally charged through that barricade of Antifa militants that were throwing things at the officers there in Seattle? Did you see that yesterday?
I did. That's what they should do. You're throwing stuff at police. I believe in the peaceful right to protest. In fact, our Constitution talks about peaceful assembly. What a lot of these Antifa people forget is the word peaceful. They're like, we have the right to assemble. Yes, you have the right to assemble, but you don't have the right to throw Molotov cocktails at the police.
That's right.
That's not.
Yeah, there's been a lot of police officers that have been injured, and military too. I mean, and this kind of stuff really started on our southern border years ago when the president first took office. All the people that were being sent to try to enter our country illegally, they were assaulting our ICE agents and our border patrol. And this just cannot be tolerated. We need to clamp down hard on these clowns that are causing this chaos and injury, because we care about our law enforcement and our military, our veterans. They're very important to us here in the United States because we are a nation of law and order. And when we have people who bravely step up and serve in those capacities, we need to have their back. And the best thing we can do is make sure these people are brought to justice. And I don't like seeing these Democrat politicians who are allowing these people to not only perpetrate these crimes, but then when they're arrested by the law enforcement, they let them back out on the street and don't even have them pay any kind of a bond. Like they're just, it's a revolving door, and they're back out and they're offending and injuring more people.
Yeah, I think that is kind of ridiculous. Another thing I think is ridiculous is the Biden campaign, for example, giving money to bail out the rioters, basically, and other Democrats giving money to bail out the rioters. Mm-hmm. I think that is absolutely ridiculous.
So have you come...
And then Biden campaign, Biden had a new campaign commercial where he blames the riot on Trump, by the way. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I did. Like, that's just typical of these liberals. They're always trying to blame the other guy. I experienced some of that in my own campaign here in Palm Beach County. So I was also seeing that in Pittsburgh, there were some BLM mobs who came into a McDonald's that was owned by a black, they had a black store manager there at this McDonald's, and they were threatening him and shoving him. Like, this stuff is crazy. But the interesting thing that I have noticed, at least when I was in Manhattan and in D.C., the majority of people who are protesting and rioting and looting are Caucasians, and oftentimes women. They're white females who are on the front line causing this chaos. And the people that claim to be speaking out for Black lives, they aren't the blacks. In fact, many of the blacks are speaking out against them. They see what's going on, and they don't speak up for them. They aren't doing anything that is of a positive nature towards the blacks in our community. They're actually giving them a bad name, and they don't appreciate it. And I want to thank the pastors, the black pastors who have come out publicly in their congregations and are speaking about these things and calling them out, because we need to do that, because we are one human race. And just the fact that they are screaming racism, but yet they are partitioning off segments of our population and saying, you're black, you're Asian, blah, 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 that is feeding into that racism narrative. And we need to stop doing that. We are one race, the human race.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's actually a video of a black woman in New York yelling at the Antifa protesters to leave and go burn their own communities, because she said, you come here, you burn down stuff, you loot, you destroy stuff, and then you leave because you can go home. But you don't have to live with the aftermath. You don't have to live with the cleanup. And she was going off on them. There's another video of a group of black people with AR-15s defending their neighborhood, stopping Antifa who are trying to march through their neighborhood, saying, no, you're not coming here. You guys go start trouble somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And I think more and more we're going to see that happen, because it's just the way it has to happen, because if not, it's never going to end.
Well, the people have had enough. We're so fed up, and we want our country back. We're tired of the bullshit.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I am, and I think a lot of people are, and I think this is going to play into Trump's hands in the election. The Biden campaign kind of miscalculated everything. They thought that the support was going to wane. What I think happened is they thought that the riots and the protests were going to be a couple weeks long, if that, and then it was going to stop. But they didn't stop, and the more and more it happens, it's playing into Trump's hands. In fact, Don Lemon on his show was pleading for the people to stop, because he said that, it's making Trump look right. And the reason why it's making Trump look right is because he actually was right on this situation.
Yeah. Well, it's really reassuring to see that so many more people are beginning to wake up. I just want to remind you folks, if anybody wants to call in and ask a question or add anything to our show today, you're welcome to call in at 215-TOP-TALK.
Yeah, it's getting crazy out there, And who knows what is going to happen after the election. What I'm worried about is if and when Trump wins, what's going to happen, what's going to be the response. Because either way, I think there's going to be violence. But if Trump wins, I think there's going to be a lot of violence. And I think that's going to be when people finally rise up and say, you're going to stop this violence, or we will stop you.
Absolutely. Well, we all remember, I'm sure, what happened 4 years ago. You know, they were all these people who gathered together, and they had their marches in D.C. and in L.A. and various places around the country. Like, people just didn't want to accept the results, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of that this time.
Oh, yeah. Well, I definitely do think we're going to see a hell of a lot more of that. And I think it's going to be taken to another level. It's going to be a lot more violent than what it was. Remember during the last election where they burned the limousine of a foreign immigrant to the country who just wanted to, live the American dream, and they burned his limousine? I think we're going to see a lot of that happening. I covered the J20 protest because I live right outside D.C., and they were breaking Starbucks windows and everything else. It doesn't make any sense.
Wow.
All the destruction.
Mm-hmm.
They burned down like family.
If we just stop and think about the amount of money and valuable property that has been destroyed over the last few months, like not only the people that haven't been able to work, we've been having to dip into our savings and live off our savings, and people haven't been working, so they haven't been increasing their bottom line, and then they're destroying these buildings and so many of our personal property, rioting in these businesses. Like, when is it going to end? I hate to even think about the total number of loss since the first week of March. It's got to be phenomenal. I mean, this is like worse than the perfect storm, where you have two hurricanes meeting, in the Gulf or in the Atlantic, and a tsunami on the Pacific coast, and all these things happening at once, because it's affected the whole nation, not just one state or not just two states, but the whole nation has been consumed with this garbage. And we need to get back on building our nation. And it's been really encouraging to see, the Dow and the New York Stock Exchange has really been rebounding quite nicely in the recent weeks, and our job numbers are improving. So there's reason to be encouraged, but still the loss is just crazy. It's mind-boggling to contemplate.
Yeah, absolutely. It is really mind-boggling to contemplate. I'm surprised that the economy isn't worse right now than what it is, and I think that's a testament to Trump's economy.
That's right.
Because, Obama, I think her economy would be incredibly terrible right now.
Yeah, just think, if we hadn't been on such a good footing at the beginning of all this, what would have happened to our country? We would be in a lot worse shape right now. And I don't know that there's anyone else that can get us out of the hole that we've been put in over the summer besides Donald J. Trump, our president. We really owe him a debt of gratitude for the work that he has done to put us in a better standing economically, and making us more aware of what the true nature of our government has been for a good many decades. And I just know that there's a lot of patriots out there who wish he would speed it up a little bit. Like, we really want to see these arrests happening more and more every day. We want to see more of the children being rescued, and we want justice. We have so many people that have been harmed, and we need to have this remedied.
We definitely do. We definitely do need to have it remedied sooner than later. One thing I will say about the election, even if you don't like Trump, the next president is going to have probably 2 to 3 Supreme Court justice picks. And do you really want that in the hands of Biden?
No, I surely would not. Absolutely not. I tell you, that guy, he is scary. He is really scary.
You never know where he is half the time.
Yeah, or what day.
Who's really going to be running president? You know, he's not going to be able to run the country. I mean, he never even leaves his basement. So he's going to run the country.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I noticed on Gateway Pundit today, it was talking about this black man in Georgia stabbed a stranger because he felt the need to find a white male to kill. Like, what the heck? This is starting to look like South Africa. People targeting whites. Like, this is insane.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's what's going to happen. I've actually written several articles on South Africa, talking to the actual people from South Africa. And it's really scary what's happening over there. And that's what the Democrats want to replicate over here.
That's true. I have a lot of friends in South Africa, and I talk to them on a daily basis. And I've been very concerned for many, many months and talking about it frequently. And I'm going to have 1 or 2 of them come on my show sometime in the coming days, so we can get a firsthand testimony of what's really going on there. It's really frightening. And the idea that we have people here in the U.S. on our soil that are already thinking along those lines and taking steps along those lines, like what's happening in South Africa. Like, I think this, if nothing else, is going to really start to wake more people up, because when they start coming after them, like that couple, was it Arkansas, where that couple, was in
McCloskey.
Yeah, where they came into their property and the husband and wife went out with their firearms and they got arrested. Like, what the heck?
Yeah, angry mob comes on my property. It's probably not going to end the way they want it to end. The interesting thing about the McCloskeys is that, according to St. Louis law, they can't be charged unless the firearms are working, and neither one of the firearms actually were working. They weren't working firearms. So the DA out there asked the police department when they took it together so it would work, because without that, her case is trash, and the police department refused. So that's a good thing, at least. But,
wow.
They're going to get off, because you can't charge them for brandishing if the firearms aren't in working condition, then they weren't.
Wow, I hadn't heard that yet, so thanks for sharing that, John. I don't know if I would have been so brave to go out there holding a firearm that wasn't armed and ready to go. That took some balls.
But I think at the point, I don't think they really had a choice. The people were coming on through their property. They were going to, they could have been in the house in a matter of seconds. So I don't think they really had a choice. They had to do something.
Yeah, they did. They certainly did. And I'm glad they've raised awareness about this problem. They're really attacking our Second Amendment every opportunity they can. And it's all a big distraction because they want, total and complete control over the American people. They want to take away all our liberty and freedom. That's why they've done all of these things like the COVID and these false flag attacks and what have you.
Oh, yeah.
And I find it really disgusting. I'm sitting here looking at an article that came out today, and it's talking about the NBA donating $300 million to Black Lives Matter and the Democrat Party. What the heck?
Yep. Yeah, would you donate to a organization that on their website, this is on their website, that says one of their goals is to destroy the nuclear family?
Oh, that's been on the books for a long time. I have to tell you a story of something that happened to me back in the 90s. I was taking a flight from Nashville, Tennessee to Arizona, and a lady sat down on the plane beside me. And being that I'm a very extrovert person, I struck up a conversation, and I asked her if she was going home or going on vacation, and she said, "I'm going to a convention." And I inquired further, and I said, "Oh, what kind of convention?" And she replied, "A witches' convention." Now she's really got my attention. And so I asked, "What do you do at a witches' convention?" And what she said next, John, I couldn't believe. Like, this is outrageous that a group of any individuals would think to do this. But she told me they were getting together at this witches' convention to pray for the destruction of the family. This was back in the 90s. This has been part of their agenda for a long time, decades. And we have seen the family really, in so many cases, being dissolved. It's heartbreaking because this is why our youth, and I think this is the reason why they were praying to destroy the family unit, because we know that when the father is absent in the home, in an African American family, there are many, many times more likely for those children to wind up in prison. And
80% more likely.
Yeah, it's insane. So it's hard for me to comprehend that we have individuals in the world who think this way. Like, it's so counter to how I think. Like, I'm pro-life. I think that all life should be protected, whether it's in the womb or an elder. We need to be respecting life. And to have people that are doing everything they can, both on a physical and a spiritual level, to completely destroy the fabric of our nation and the world by tearing it. Like, they're not even ripping it at the seams. They are taking out thread by thread by thread. They are completely disassembling society as we know it, because they want complete and total domination of every life on the planet. And we as patriots here in the United States, we need to stand against it. We need to unite, and we must fight. Because if the United States goes down, so goes the world. And we cannot have that. And we know how this story ends.
Yeah, there's a good... Hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Sorry, it sounded like everything cut off there for a second. There's a good documentary out there called it's called The World Without Us, which is actually a play on the word because it's not really us. It's The World Without U.S. It's a British documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And they get all these like really smart people. I mean, they're not like all pro-American people. There's a lot of really smart people from Oxford and all this other stuff. And they put it to them: if the United States is, closed off, what would the world be like? And the people who are not pro-American by any stance of the word, to a T, all said it would be horrible for everyone, everywhere.
Yeah, it would. Like, I'm a global businesswoman. I've been all over the planet except Antarctica. And everywhere I've been, whether it's Egypt or Europe, Africa, everywhere I've been, people want to come to the United States. Like, I had people begging me. 5 years ago was my last tour around the world, and then I had an accident after that. But I had people coming up to me and saying, can you please do something to help me and my family come to the U.S.? People want to come here. We have people pouring in through our borders because this is the greatest country on the planet. It truly is. If you go and spend time in any of these other countries, now I'm not saying they have nothing to offer positive, because they do. Like, I love the fabrics. They're so colorful in Ethiopia. There's beautiful fruits over in Asia. The architecture is beautiful. Europe has some magnificent things as well. Everywhere you go, there's great things. But societally, the freedoms and liberties that we have been founded on here in the United States is unmatched anywhere on the planet. And they want to take that all away from us. And they have been taking those things away from us through all these false flags. They use these excuses to invade our privacy. Like, the latest thing is this COVID thing. So now it's contact tracing. They want to know everybody you've been in contact with over the last 2 weeks. Oh my God. Like, no, that's none of your business. When I was flying back from JFK that first week in June, after I had been to New York and DC, actually, I guess it was the second week of June, I was met on the plane before we landed in West Palm Beach at PBI with a document that had been put together as a result of Executive Order 20-80, which was put in place by Governor Ron DeSantis. And in this order, they were asking for all your personal information. They wanted to know where you're coming from, down to the names and addresses and everything, all the contact information, phone numbers, where you're going, why you're coming here, what's your purpose, how long will you be here, and ordering you to be quarantined for 2 weeks. And on a threat of 60 days imprisonment and a $500 fine, if you don't give them all this information and consent to be vaccinated, they're going to lock you up. When I read that, that was a big wake-up call for me, because I know my rights, and I pulled out my pocket Constitution, and when I got off the plane, I was met with about 10 people of authority, both Palm Beach Sheriff deputies, military, health department personnel, airport authority, and they were wanting me to hand them my form that has been completely filled out. And I said, we have a problem. Why don't we step over here and let's have a talk? And so we stepped over to the side, and I looked at the closest military officer to me, and I said, I know my rights, and I will not consent to a vaccine. And they started to say, oh, this is not about a vaccine. And I said, read it. And he started reading it, and he saw that I was correct. And this is a problem, because the people who are following the orders, just like in the time of Nazi Germany, the people tried to use the excuse, well, I was only following orders. No, there's no excuse. You need to educate yourself personally. You are personally responsible, and you will be held accountable. And I refused to consent. And when he read it, he said, "You may go home." Because he knew I was right. And our military and our law enforcement, they need to make sure that they are up to date on what all of these things, all the fine print, they need to be aware. None of this like we had with Obamacare. Pass the bill and then we'll find out what's in it. No, you have to know what's in it before you act on it. And you don't need to be arresting patriots if you don't understand what you're standing up against. And you're not protecting their constitutional rights. Like, we cannot have this happening.
Well, if you own an Android phone, if you go into settings, then Google settings, they're actually a COVID-19 tracing thing built into Google phones. Also, any phone with any iPhone has that on as well, but you can go and turn it off. If you go to settings and Google, you can set it off. Or I'm not sure how to do it on an iPhone, turn it off on an iPhone, but there's a way to turn it off on the iPhone too. So now the tracing apps are built into the two major smartphone makers' phones.
Would that be Samsung or LG or just the mainly the
No, it's Samsung. Anything with Android and anything with iOS, iPhone iOS in it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, a lot of people don't even realize that. They didn't even tell anyone that they were updating that. They just did it.
Yeah. So, do you know the exact steps that you go through to do that? You go under security or
on a Samsung? On a Samsung, you would go into your apps, then go into settings, and then if you scroll down, it will say Google, and underneath it says Google settings in small print. You click on that, and it will say COVID-19 support.
Yeah, mine's turned off.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Leave it off. That's scary that's even in there, right? No one knows that.
I think
I just happened to be going to change something else. I noticed that.
Yeah, I think I set mine to off a couple of months ago when they first started doing this kind of stuff, because we need to protect our privacy. They have no business following us that closely. It's against our rights.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but, they do.
Yeah, well, we need to put a stop to that. Oh, I just got an Amber Alert. Dade County, Randy Canyon, black female, 10 years old, white van, unknown tag, unidentified white male. So these kinds of things, they come across your phone constantly, these Amber Alerts, and we used to get the pictures on the milk cartons and stuff. And I can't tell you how many reporters have questioned me, because I do keep up with Q and the posts that are put out there. And they call it a conspiracy theory, and they say it's not true. They try to say it's not true, but here's the facts. I always look at facts and evidence. I just got an Amber Alert, and if this isn't true, if this is a theory and not reality, why am I getting Amber Alerts on my phone on a regular, ongoing basis? And why are U.S. Marshals rescuing by the dozens on a frequent day now at different places around the country? They're rescuing these children that have been kept in these abusive situations and been trafficked. Why is that? Why are you saying it's a theory when it's an actual fact? I
mean, I don't know. I do know that slavery is still a huge problem in this day and age.
Sure
And people
is.
think that there's no such thing as slavery, but there is tons of slavery, whether it's child sex slavery or other types of slavery. There is a lot of that still going around.
There sure is. And it's all over the world. It's not just, in little pockets. It's everywhere. Last week
Yeah,
there was
I read
39 children rescued in the Atlanta area. Like, oh my God. And then there was more in Ohio and in California and down in Miami. And it's just everywhere.
Yeah, I read a book a while ago about slavery and modern slavery in Canada. If you think the U.S. has problems, the Canadian problem is just ridiculous per capita. That's what the book talked about how a terrible job that Canada was doing, and that surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
About how bad it was, but yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, and there's a lot of child
Very
trafficking that's happening in South Africa. And actually, one of my friends in South Africa just messaged me, and they're telling me that it's coming out now that one of the largest suppliers of adrenochrome is South Africa. South Africa and Melbourne. Yeah. So, and it's because, they have a large black population, and that is a coveted source of adrenochrome, which is why, when Haiti had their earthquake, HRC, she got in there, and President Clinton and Obama, they were all wanting to jump in there and quote unquote help, come together, Bush and Clinton and Obama, to help Haiti. They were helping themselves because they wanted these children. And it's insane. Like, it's hard to comprehend the depth of the heinous crimes being perpetrated against humanity today. It is mind-boggling. I can't even find the words to describe how I feel about it.
Yeah, it really is. It's crazy.
And I would love an opportunity to get my hands on Anthony Fauci and Bill Gates, because those guys, they deserve some really serious consequences for the crimes they have committed against the people all over this planet.
There's a lot of people who commit crimes and get away with it. Whether they're politicians or just super rich people. There's definitely a ruling class out there. And we have to push back against that ruling class sometimes.
Yeah, because we need to flip things right side up. They've been upside down a long time. Instead of the people in D.C. serving us, we the people, we've been serving them. They've been taking and taking and taking from us. And we need to change our mindset, because we are the boss. We are the ones that pay them. They are our employee. So you got any ideas on how we can flip things right side up, John?
That's the question, right? How do we flip things right side up?
You got 3 minutes.
The only way that I can see is to get our voices out there and let them be heard. And that's the way we're going to do it peacefully.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you have the mainstream media silencing us, you have social media silencing us with shadow banning and they take away our platform. What other ways do you see how we can actually get our voices heard and get them out there?
There is free social media platforms. When I say free, I'm not talking about like cost. I'm talking about like free speech wise that we have to start using more. Parler is one, Parler, which I'm sure everyone out there probably knows about. There's other websites like Minds, which is like, the mind in your head. The people who run that are very free speech oriented, very libertarian. So we have to start using those platforms more than the Facebooks and the Twitters and these left-leaning platforms. And that's the only way that we're going to really change that. Just use alternative social media platforms.
Well, these other alternative platforms certainly give a way for conservatives to go and communicate with one another and strategize. But the masses are back there on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook. So we need to keep both feet in both sides of this vast.
We definitely do.
Yeah, because we want to reach the masses, and if we go,
I also think we should push.
We put ourselves over here to the side, and we're not engaging with the other people, then we won't have an opportunity to wake them up. So I think we have to do both.
Yeah, we do. I think we need to push to have Twitter and Facebook and those social media platforms classified as utilities so they can no longer discriminate legally against conservatives, and they have to treat everyone the same.
Well, John, I really appreciate you coming on today. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And I just hope you guys will join us again tomorrow on Reba Live. I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.